This is Sonia Wagner representing PCA families in one of our recordings that capture lived experience and best practice research-based learning that assists kinship, permanent and adoptive parents and carers in supporting young people. PCA Families is a zero tolerance organisation. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet and pay respect to elders past and present and express our intention to move together to a place of justice and partnership. Today, we are discussing the brain and communication with Chrissie Davies from Chaos to Calm. Welcome, Chrissie.
Good morning.
Chrissie has over 20 years experience working with children and families as a teacher in the school classroom, working with extreme behaviours, and as a mother of 2 young children. Chrissie has a wealth of knowledge to share. Chrissie, what else do we need to know about you?
Where do we start? How do you put 20 years into a 2-minute conversation?
Yes.
I guess the easy way of explaining my work is I had a really long and successful career in specialist settings in education. So working with lots of kids who didn't fit the mold of, mainstream education. And I never got to the point where I didn't love being a teacher, but I just felt compelled to share my knowledge on a wider level with so many more parents and families and teachers, and sharing my philosophy about how to understand children. And then obviously went on to adopt my own 2 beautiful children through adoption and permanent care, and now that's added another beautiful complexity and layer to our gorgeous family. Which is also very misunderstood out in the community. So I'm on a mission to change the way the world views children's behaviour.
Great. And you're using all your knowledge, your professional and your lived experience. So that's exactly what we need to learn from.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I know that you're really passionate about is educating every parent about their children's brains so that they understand what drives their child. So nobody would get into a car without a little bit of instruction or jump into a pool without knowing how to swim. So can you outline for us how the brain works and what every parent needs to know? Oh,
my little brain. And I'm so passionate about teaching children about how to love their own brains. Of course, I wrote a book. Shall I give it a little plug?
Yeah, go for it.
Love Your Brain. 1 year old recently. So I wrote it last lockdown, but I think it's one of the things that I've really uncovered through the 8 years that I've been consulting with families is that there is still a really big lack in understanding around child development. So a lot of families, I would say the core of people who reach out to me for support with their families are around the age of 2, when our children start to express themselves, as I like to say, through their behaviour, mostly and in many sort of negative, aggressive, tantrums, meltdowns, all those sorts of really big feelings that our kids start displaying. And it's all to do with their brain development. So I love that you said that. It's, and I say this to families all the time, you are growing a human brain. You are growing a human being. Why do we think that would be easy?
Yes, very true.
We've sold this false sense, I suppose, as parents. Is like, and this is why I'm a really big advocate for talking about the challenges of parenthood and the challenges of raising children. There's no shame in saying it's hard. It is
hard.
really hard, right?
Yep.
And so that's why the whole core of my philosophy centres around using therapeutic approaches, obviously, which I'm trained in, which I believe that all children and families can respond really, really positively to, but that we bring every sort of understanding and our insights back to where our children are at in terms of their brain development.
Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah.
Their brains, our children's brains, are not functioning at full capacity, and they are so far away from being fully developed that they just don't see the world in the same way as us. So we can't expect them to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, very true. So I guess related to understanding the brain is the concept of seeing the child and not the behaviour, which you kind of alluded to. So I like to think about it as seeing the emotions and the fears and the challenges that are sort of coming up for them, not the behaviour. So when a child is falling apart into those tears or tantrums, it's usually because there's something more going on. Maybe that they can't voice it, or maybe they don't have the right language. Maybe there's some other things going on. So how do we work out what's going on when they have those tears or tantrums, and What techniques and strategies do you use to manage those situations?
Well, first of all, you said maybe there's something going on. There is always something going on underneath. And that's when we have to be behaviour detectives, right? What I like to call it, trying to unpack what is causing the emotion. All behaviour stems from an emotion. Okay, and this is why I believe teaching children first and foremost about emotional intelligence, reading facial cues, body language, because so much of human behaviour is inferred.
Yes.
And talking about our feelings and our emotions and our brains.
Yes.
And how we can take care of our own brains to keep them happy and healthy is the core of really teaching children how to understand behaviour and how they communicate within a family unit. So it's really complicated for them, right?
Yes.
So I think when we understand that that our children's behaviour is their communication, what are they telling us through their behaviour? What are they communicating to us? What are they expressing to us? And often that comes out as loud and sometimes aggressive and tears. And one of the things I say to families all the time is, well, we as adults have bad days. Our children are allowed to have bad days too. And just because they're children doesn't mean that they have to be happy all the time, right?
Yes. Yep.
And when we can start to view children as individual little human beings who have their own ideas, thoughts, values, wants and needs, and all behaviour comes from an unmet need, especially for a child, then we can start to really understand that we are a team, we are a family, and just because I'm an adult doesn't mean I get to tell you or control you or make every single decision about your life.
Yes.
And relinquishing control we were talking about this, weren't we? Is a huge breakthrough for parents, I think, because we have been programmed through generations and generations that adults have power or control or authority over children. This is where, a big part of my work where I'm really trying to shift those stereotypes is that, we're actually, just because we're adults doesn't mean we have the right to tell our children what to do all the time.
Yes. Yes.
So coming alongside them and being in tune with them and teaching them about their own brains and teaching them about their behaviour, they then start to learn that their behaviour impacts on others.
Yes. Yes. Great. Very passionate about that too, about
and it can be
relinquishing control.
Through love, through connection, through patience.
Yes,
through
very
understanding,
true.
I'm certainly not saying it's easy, but the truth is, and you would know this, a really big part of therapeutic parenting is that we don't believe in using consequences or punishment as a way of shaping behaviour. And I talk to all families about this, is that you can go down that consequential road, it won't stop the behaviour from happening. So you can make a choice, because the consequential road ends up being quite negative and we get lots of pushback from our children, or we can go down the more therapeutic road. And yes, we still get the challenging behaviour, but we can connect and teach our children in a much more positive, loving way.
Absolutely. So, and I think it has longevity because they'll learn to do things for the right reasons as opposed to that they're being watched or controlled. So
we want them to have that intrinsic motivation, right?
Correct.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of trauma families would connect with this, because a lot of our kids have challenges around perceptions of self and worthiness because of their separation and loss of their birth family and all those different things that we deal with. I know with my own son in particular, I've had to work really hard to move away from that, especially rewarding him with anything, and food is a really big motivator for him. So, it's very easy to fall into that trap with trauma kids, to almost bribe them, I suppose.
Yes.
But part of our job is to fill up that hole that's been left in their little souls, isn't it?
Yes.
To make them feel worthy and lovable without all those external things.
Yes, good point. Good point. Yes, I was doing a bit of reflecting on that yesterday with someone. I think I've created a pet addiction in my family. So,
A pet addiction.
so instead of food, I think I might have used pets. So, and what about calming children down? I mean, that's your specialty. You're the Chaos to Calm Consultancy. So the timing concept seems to work really well as part of that therapeutic parenting approach. So can you tell me a little bit about how that works and how that helps with emotional regulation, why it's better than the naughty corner?
Well, the naughty corner is so outdated, and like I was sort of saying before, it actually doesn't teach your children anything. It almost actually says to our kids, you are unlovable, and I don't want to be with you when you make a mistake or misbehave or don't please me. Right?
Yes.
And so then that once again links back into control. So I'm just going to say this over and over and over. Co-regulate, co-regulate, co-regulate to teach your children regulation skills. Because we know that our children in particular have lots of challenges around emotional regulation due to that, amygdala.
Yes.
And they need lots of practice, and they need to be with an adult who understands that it's very difficult for them to regulate on their own. And the truth is, no children learn how to emotionally regulate by being told to calm down.
Yes.
Or being put in a corner and left to cry until they stop crying.
Yes.
That doesn't actually teach them anything. And the number one goal we want to remember when our children are dysregulated, or their brains are flooded, or they're having a tantrum or a meltdown, which are very different, as we know, our number one job in the moment is to soothe that brain.
Soothe the brain. Yeah.
We got to get that brain back down from a 10 to a 5 to a 3 to a 0, and then we either move on if it is a teachable moment, which generally right then and there is never the right moment. We can pick that up later, but our job in that moment is to calm our children's brains, bring them back to a safe place, and then we move on. Yes,
totally. And I think also that naughty corner concept, it's how are you learning something by sitting in a corner? So it's about a missing piece of knowledge or a missing piece of regulation, if you like. So
and the thing we've got to remember too is that our children's nervous system is interwoven with ours, and so they feed. It's like they're connected. We know this. They're connected to us not only in the physical sense, but in the neurological sense too. And their brains are so connected to ours. And this is why I talk to families all the time about, well, you're an adult with a fully developed brain. What's your excuse?
Yeah.
Our children, they have a very neurological and biological reason for their behavior. You know what I mean? So if we weren't taught those skills ourselves as children, or, through the way that our parents communicated, it doesn't come naturally for us to do this with our own children.
Yes.
Right? And so when we shift away from that, to when children make a mistake or they're naughty or bad, which I don't even use those words, but I know a lot of people do, then we punish or we sanction or we remove something as a way of shaping behavior. But the research shows that it actually doesn't do anything long term. Right?
Yeah.
And so what actually helps our children understand behavior and understand relationships is trust, safety, connection. I love you even on your bad days.
Yes.
Yeah. And when I'm displaying big emotions and I'm dysregulated and I don't know what the heck is going on, I need you then the most.
Yes. Yeah.
So don't push me away. Pull me close.
Yes. Bring it in. So that
Let's
reminds
hug
me.
it out, baby.
Yeah, totally. So I can remember many times the next day or a few hours later, sitting together on the couch. What's happening for you in that moment? Just having those kind of casual kind of conversations and reflections. So
I was just going to say, sometimes when our children are really young, they can't reflect those, Sonia. You know what I mean? They actually don't understand. And so, just teaching them they feel better in themselves when their brain is calm. And that's why I wrote the book as well. Feed your brain, love your brain, give it exercise, take it to nature. Like they're really child-friendly ways we can teach children how to look after their own brains, as well as obviously modeling that emotional stability for our kids as well, as much as possible. We all have bad days.
Yeah, exactly. And so what about, behaviours that arise from trauma as distinct from behaviours that arise from neurodevelopmental matters like ADHD or sensory or other challenges? So we're asked about that kind of difference a lot of the time. Is there a difference between autism and trauma behaviour, and how to identify it? So is it important to differentiate them? And do these kind of labels matter?
Well, I very openly, honestly talk about seeing the child, not the behaviour. And I feel like labels or getting a formal diagnosis, and many of us who've got trauma kids will never get a formal diagnosis. We're not even recognised by the National Disability Insurance, yet. We'll keep working on that. But the label to me, or the diagnosis to me, really unlocks and opens doors to funding for our families, which is incredibly important because often our children need a lot of external supports. But I also think it opens doorways in education too for our children, so that a lot of teachers actually say, okay, well, yes, he does have autism, or yes, there is a trauma background. It's not just the parents making it up. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because trauma is so misunderstood, especially in education. I guess from our perspective as families, it is helpful to have that label, but it does not help you in the moment. It doesn't help you when you're trying to get your kids in the shower, or it doesn't help you when your child's having a meltdown in Coles supermarket. That does not actually help you have the skills or the insight or the empathy to be able to connect with your child to help them move through that behaviour, right?
Yes.
So that's what I talk to families about. Often they want to know why. Why is this happening? Why does my child keep doing this? Or where is this behaviour coming from? And I think the biggest breakthrough we can have as parents is to stop asking why and just focus on what our children need in that moment.
Okay. Yeah.
Which on any given day will be different, right?
Yes,
depending
absolutely.
on the environment and what's happening for that day and how much they've eaten and who's around, and and that's why I feel like we're on this roller coaster. And I feel like a lot of parents probably thought that parenting was going to be a little bit more smooth sailing, what I mean? And it's just not like that.
Yes.
Trauma aside, that's another layer, isn't it? But if we can learn to embrace the ups and downs, the good days, the hard days, that they are, it's like when we talk about good or bad food, we've got to really shift the narrative around that.
Yes.
It's just life with kids,
Yes, correct. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
So we take the good and the positives and the negatives as all part of our family fibre and structure.
Yes.
And it's just part of life, living as a family.
Yes. And every relationship, I think about, has ups and downs, doesn't it?
Sure.
So every friendship you have, sometimes you're drawn more to some at a point in time and away from others, and it sort of flips around. So
absolutely,
I think it's a normal part of life to have these kind of cycles, if you like. So I guess to flip the question, are there some non-typical behaviours we could look for to identify trauma?
I think one of the things that I talk about is the intensity of meltdowns with our kids. They if you compare them to, like, I'll never forget watching because I'm a big observer, obviously being a behaviourist, but observing other families out in the park and other people reprimanding their children and them having a tantrum, as opposed to our tantrums that are long and loud and intense. Like the intensity is I think one of the really big challenges that we have, because it's very emotionally draining on us as parents, and our children need a lot of emotional support from us to come back to that state of calm, right?
Yes. And
it does get easier, obviously, as they grow and develop, but I think that is definitely one of the biggest challenges we have as families. That I mean, all families deal with you know, tantrums and meltdowns and those sorts of things, but it's the intensity around it.
Yes.
And the frequency, I think, is the other thing as well.
Yes.
You know, I remember in the peak of my little guy, I reckon around 2.5, it was like multiple times a day, you know, long, loud, intense. And by you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh, wow,
Yes.
that was intense, you know,
Yes.
that was really intense.
Yes.
And then you got to get back up and do it again the next day.
Next day.
So I feel like that additional layer that, you know, trauma families and, you know, families who've got autistic children, and it's almost like that, just that little extra layer that we deal with, that some sort of more neurotypical families get a bit more reprieve from.
Yes. Yeah. And it is hard and it is a long journey. So
it is.
Yeah.
And I think the other layer, and I see this really commonly through our incredible support group,
yes,
is this lack of understanding out in the community about not punishing our children.
Yes.
You know, when they're challenging or they're oppositional, or it's a very, you know, specific and empathetic approach that we use with our kids, because we have really good knowledge about where the behaviour is coming from.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But other people who don't know us or don't know our family, looking from the outside in, they're probably thinking,
yes,
geez, lady, you're letting him get away with a fair bit, you know.
Yes, correct.
But once again, this is what I talk to all families about. You know, when we stop making those judgments and assumptions about children and about children's behaviour, we'll stop thinking those things wherever we go, wherever we are. You know what I mean?
Yes, correct. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I saw a little post this morning, and it was a lady with a son in front of her, and the son was sticking his tongue out at another child, and the lady was behind him with her tongue poking out. And so the concept was, it's always the parents behind the child that cause this, right? Or cause this bad behaviour. And I kind of reflected on it, went, I'd love to just say that that's not always the case. So sometimes it's other things going on for the child. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, in our case, we know there
and
is.
in our case
you
it
know
is.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's easier to have that empathy, I suppose. But I think one of the biggest breakthroughs that we have to also make as parents is just be confident in the decisions that you're making in the moment, regardless of where you are, who's watching, or what other people think about you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Good point. Because you'll find out later why it was right. That was my experience. So certain practices you felt were right for your child, you may not have been what mainstream media were telling you needed to do, but they turned out to be right in the long run. So yeah. So I guess you've worked with a lot of families, including a lot of families from you know, adoption and kinship and permanent care. So you've also got that lived experience in parenting your own child. So what have you learnt that is super important and super useful? And what do you wish every parent knew?
Well, I think I wish, I mean, I can't go into everyone's brain and give them my knowledge, you know, and it's so funny, isn't it? Because I have a very unique way of viewing the world due to my own experiences. I am a trauma child myself. I grew up with quite a traumatic childhood with an alcoholic father. So that's shaped my memories of my childhood. You know what I mean? And then obviously I've gone on to have 20 years of training and experience around working with families. And so I have so many conversations with people all the time about their children. And I think that one of the things that I really want families to remember is that when you truly focus on relationship and trust and connection first, your children actually will respond more positively. They will be more agreeable. They will be, you know, just lighter. And when you have that, you know, we follow the PACE approach, don't we? The playfulness that you were talking about, that you can be playful and accepting and empathetic and fun as a parent and set boundaries at the same time.
Yes.
But I feel like it's something that a lot of people find difficult.
Yes.
To, you know, where's the line, you know, between being able to be that fun, connected parent while still establishing some control, you know, because, you know, we can't eat Nutella on toast every morning for breakfast.
Yes.
you know, those sorts of things. And I feel like that if we can constantly keep our eye on the big picture with growing a human brain, we're in it for the long haul.
Yes.
Stop waiting for the moment for it to get easier.
Yes.
It doesn't get easier, right?
Yes.
And I feel like this is one of the other big misconceptions about raising children, is that people say, oh, wait till they're 5 or wait till they're 14, or like, well, what are we waiting for? Let's just live in the moment, people,
Correct. So
yeah, and trying to, yes, parenting is hard, and yes, it's hard work and all those sorts of things, but there's so much joy and so much fun to be had with children.
yes.
When you live in the moment with them.
Yes, very true. So, and I think, you can have strategies and tools in your toolkit that still allow you to have some element of structure and, don't, I'm thinking about, so for our family growing up, we would say, okay, if you want that lolly at the shop, let's grab it, let's put it into the stash for Friday night. So it didn't kind of mean they were getting a lolly every day. They kind of felt like they were getting it. They'd get to Friday night and they'd eat 2 lollies and they were done. So, but it was a way of giving a little bit of control to them and kind of also not ruining their teeth and their their diet at the same time. So I think, once you embrace that approach, you realize that you can still have an element of control without giving it fully over to the child, if you like. So
absolutely.
yeah.
And one of my favorite strategies is say yes more.
Yes, say
we
yes
say
more.
no to our children all the time.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that, and no, you can't jump on the couch, all those sorts of things, that because children see fun everywhere.
Yes.
Life is like a, carnival to them.
Yes.
We're the ones that have to set the boundaries. But when you are more relaxed around those sorts of things,
mm-hmm.
but you save your time and energy for the big things, like sleeping, eating, speaking kindly, and you invest your time and energy into really teaching those lifelong skills that our children are going to need.
Yes.
I never forget this. I've got this saying with my kids when they, when they're upset with something, and or they say, I hate you, which of course they do. And they say, I hate you. I say, that's okay. I understand that you're feeling angry right now. I said, I still love you when you're angry. I said, but part of my job as your mum is to teach you how to be a good human being. And sometimes that means you ain't going to like what I've got to say. And
yes.
That's okay. And that's
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
about holding that space for our kids, isn't it? They're allowed to be angry. They're allowed to express themselves. They're not allowed to throw shoes at me, but they're it's about having those boundaries of allowing our children to express themselves. And it's so cute. And sometimes my son will say, it's okay, Mum. I know you only do it because you love me.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
So it's getting in.
That's gorgeous. I used a similar one. I was like, I'm going to parent you and I'll be your friend later on. So, I'm doing that for these reasons. I could do it in, let you have everything, and that'd be really easy for me. But, my job is to parent you. So when you're 18, come back. We'll be friends.
When it comes from that place of love, Sonia, and often when I'm hugging, sometimes I'm hugging my kids, I'm saying, I actually am saying this because I love you so much.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, Mum.
And that's the difference, as you say, come from a place of love, not from anger and control. So makes all the difference. So
absolutely.
Yeah, great. Is there anything else you wanted to comment on today?
I don't know. We've covered so much, haven't we?
We have. So so thank you for giving us all those lessons and things to keep thinking about in this really long journey towards, connection and relationships.
And I think just ending it on, it's just start every day as a new day.
Yes.
Every day is a new day. What happened yesterday's happened. We wipe the slate clean, we move on, and we start fresh the next day. Because, most kids,
yes,
until they're teenagers, they wake up pretty happy, and they've forgotten about what happened the day before. So we've just got to let it go too.
Yeah, that's part of regulation, teaching regulation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
and I think for trauma families, that's incredibly important. To keep getting up and showing up for our kids in that really positive place and understanding, and just wiping the slate clean and understanding that don't take it personally.
Yes.
It's not personal.
Yes. Thank you. We could all learn from that in every part of life. So thank you very much. And to anyone making the time to listen to this recording, please, Thank you. Sorry, not please. Thank you for giving up your valuable time for the benefit of the young people in your life. And until next time, have an amazing week.